You don't need to spend 6+ days a week in the gym or do endless amount of cardio to get in really good shape. The old ways of training your chest Monday, your back Tuesday, your legs Wednesday, and having to spend 5 to 6 days a week in the gym and do loads of cardio is outdated. There's a much simpler way to get in great shape in half the time. So how do I know this? It's because I've used my 3-hour per week training system on my clients like Charlie, Sam, and Stu, who you can see on the screen here. All these guys got in great shape just training 3 hours per week. All of these guys have got either businesses or the work shift work, or they've got a family. So trying to get into the gym 5 days a week is just not realistic for them. So we use a 3-hour per week training system that's based on science and facts that help them get in great shape in half the time. And if you're new to the channel or you don't know who I am, my name is Christian. I'm the owner of the Unit Gym, which is a gym based outside of Manchester for clients only. And I coach guys to drop fat, build muscle so they can feel more confident in the clothes, all without having to spend the whole life in the gym. Back in my late teens and early 20s, to be fair, all the way to my late 20s, I had a big passion for bodybuilding. Growing up, I looked up to the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rocky Balboa. I looked up to these figures because they did amazing things with their life, and I thought it was really inspirational how they used the gym and getting in shape to transform their life. Now, back in school, I wasn't the most academic and I messed around a lot. I found it really hard to sit down in the classroom and concentrate and just do the typical school stuff. So I ended up getting in trouble a lot. And then it all came to a head in around year 10 when I was 14 years old, when I actually got arrested by the police for being involved in a fight I shouldn't even been involved with. And then after leaving school, I left with basically no GCSEs whatsoever. And I remember picking up the paper on that day when I was 16 years old, and the embarrassment and shame I felt for not getting qualifications was, it was to the core, basically. It didn't feel great. And then having to tell my family and my friends that I didn't pass, it just caused a lot of embarrassment within myself. So it was from that moment onwards where I needed to change my behavior, I needed to do something different. And that's when I went to college, I reset my GCSEs, I joined the gym, and for that whole year of resetting my GCSEs, it was literally focusing on studying and going to the gym after I finished college. And then after that year, I passed with B's and C's. I went on to do my A-levels, then went on to uni. And then that's where the gym also gave me a lot of purpose and direction in my life, because growing up, I enjoyed sports, I enjoyed athletics, but I hated academia, I hated studying. And if it didn't involve PE or athletics, I wasn't interested. So I started to find that the gym gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of direction in my life. And that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing today, coaching. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I genuinely believe training can improve every man's life, regardless of what your circumstances, regardless of what you've been through in your life. I think adding some sort of training into your life can improve it, and it doesn't have to be as extreme as bodybuilding like I did in my 20s. I think just doing something with your training and your diet will just improve every area of life, regardless of who you are. But I also know not every man has the ability to spend 5-6 days a week in the gym. So that's why I'm making this video, because in this video, I'm gonna show you my 3-hour per week training system that will allow you to get incredible results like you've just seen in the screen here with my clients in half the time, so you can start feeling good. So like I said at the start of the video, doing the typical chest on Monday, back Tuesday, legs Wednesday, shoulders Thursday, the whole 5-day training per week isn't great if you can't commit to 5 days per week. So guys need another way of training that will still allow them to get in great results without having to spend that amount of time in the gym. And that's where the 3-hour per week training system comes into play. So let's actually look at the science of muscle growth and what happens when you actually train a muscle. So when you train a muscle, you activate something called protein synthesis. Protein synthesis is when muscle grows. It can't grow outside of this window called protein synthesis. When I say window, it's because it only happens for a certain period of time. And usually it's between 36 and 48 hours. So that means when you train your chest on a Monday, muscle growth is typically only happening at the very most till Wednesday. So that's why training one muscle per week doesn't make sense, because if you train your chest on a Monday, by Wednesday it's finished growing. So you've then got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday where you're not really doing anything, where you could be actually training it again and actually getting good results. So the first rule of the 3 hour per week training system is making sure you train each muscle 2 times per week. Because let's say you train your chest on a Monday, like I used in the last example, by Wednesday it's finished growing, but you're hitting it again on Thursday. So you're gonna get much better results doing each muscle, training each muscle 2 times per week, rather than once per week. So let's actually look at how many working sets you need to do every single week for each muscle to get really good growth. From my experience, it's anywhere from 3 up to 10 working sets per week, but there are nuances to this. The bigger and stronger you are, typically you don't need as many working sets as someone who is weaker. So for example, let's say you get a guy who can bench 180 kg for a set of 8. The amount of damage and the amount of stimulus he will get from one working set will be a lot different to a guy who can only bench 60 kg for 8 reps. So it's a bit of a sliding scale. I personally find people who are a little bit weaker, a little bit smaller, tend to need more working sets per muscle than someone who's a lot stronger. But as a general guide, if you're watching this video and you've been inconsistent with the gym, I think anywhere from 3 up to 10 working sets per week that are difficult. I'll explain what that means a little bit later in the video. But 3 to 10 working sets per week for each muscle is the sweet spot. So for example, that could be 5 sets of chest on Monday, and then 5 sets of chest on a Thursday. Like I said, the sets need to be difficult. So what does difficult actually mean? So when you finish a set, by the time you come to the end of the set, you want to make sure you haven't got any more than 2 reps left in the tank. So for example, let's say you're doing a leg press and you're doing 3 sets of 12. If you're doing the 12th rep and you're just like, yeah, it feels pretty easy, you're probably not getting a hell of a lot of muscle growth from that. But if you get to that 12th rep and you're putting a lot of effort in and you could only do maybe another 2, that's a sweet spot. So I would say anywhere from last rep to failure to 2 reps left in the tank is the sweet spot for most people. So we've covered how many sets you need to do for each muscle per week, how many times to train a muscle each week. Now, if you're wondering, Christian, what exercises should I do for each muscle? I've got your back, don't worry. So from my experience and in my opinion, if you've been out the gym for a while and you're quite inconsistent, I prefer to use less exercises than more exercises. So for example, I usually say anywhere from 2 to 4 exercises per muscle for most people, I think is the sweet spot as a beginner or if you're intermediate. So that could be, let's say you do your chest on a Monday, you could do a flat bench press, then an incline dumbbell press. And then on a Thursday, you could do maybe a seated chest press and then a flat dumbbell fly. That's 4 exercises. I think that's enough for the majority of people. You could go up to 5, possibly 6, but you'd have to have very good reason. So stick to 2 to 4 to start off with. Keeps it simple. So what I would also do though as well, if you are doing 2 to 4 exercises, I would personally spread them exercises across the week. So I wouldn't do all 4 exercises in one session. I'd split it across 2 sessions. So like I just said, if you've got 4 total exercises, do maybe 2 of them on a Monday and then 2 on a Thursday, or you could potentially do 3 in one session as well, but try and spread it across the week so you've got a little bit of variation. The next thing is you want to make sure when you are training a muscle, you are trying to hit that muscle from different angles. What does that mean? So when you do like a flat bench press, you're going to be working your whole pec, but predominantly you'll be working the sternum aspect of your chest, which is like the middle to lower end of your chest. You'll be still hitting some of the upper part, but it'll be more biased towards the middle and lower end. So if you want really heavy bottom pecs, flat bench press or a decline bench press will be a great option. But there's also muscle fibers that come to the top part of your chest. So that's why you need to hit your chest and other muscles from different angles. So what I would do then on a Thursday is, let's say you do flat bench on a Monday, on a Thursday you could potentially do an incline dumbbell press where you're still working the whole pec, but it's more specific to the upper part of your chest. And hitting a muscle from different angles is usually very good for muscle growth because you're just ticking all the boxes to make sure you're covering all bases when it comes to training that muscle. So now we know between 3 to 10 sets a week is like the sweet range for most people. And we now know that we want to train a muscle 2 times per week and spread the exercises across the week that hits the chest or the muscle from different angles. That's the reason why doing the classic chest on Monday and then doing 3 sets on flat bench, 3 sets on incline bench, 3 sets on decline bench, and then 3 sets of cable flies, it's overkill because There's only so much muscle growth you can get in one session, and just because you do more doesn't mean you're going to get any more muscle growth. If anything, it's just going to eat into your recovery. It's going to leave you sore, so when it comes to Thursday, you can't perform as optimally as you could do if you did less and still got just as good as results, even better to be fair. So that's why that classic one muscle group per week and just doing too much isn't a great idea for most people. And now we know we don't need many working sets to stimulate muscle growth. That's where you can start pairing different muscles together in one session. So for example, training your back, your chest and your arms all together in one session works well, because to do 3 to 10 working sets on one muscle doesn't take that long. So by the time you do like 5 to 6 sets on chest, you've got enough time within the hour to then go and train another muscle group. So that's where the 3 hour per week training system starts to work. So let's take all the above principles that we've talked about in this video and start building a sample plan so you can see what it actually looks like in real life, so you can apply this to yourself. So we're gonna do upper body on a Monday. This is gonna basically consist of your chest, your back, your shoulders and your arms. Now, taking in consideration that we're gonna pick 2 to 4 exercises per body part, do 3 to 10 working sets for each muscle. Let's start to build it out. So on the screen here, you can see that you've got bench press for 3 sets of 6 to 8, incline dumbbell press for 3 sets of 8 to 10. So there are your 2 exercises for your chest. There are 6 working sets, so it meets that criteria that we talked about. For your back, you could do a lat pull down, 3 sets of 10 to 12, seated cable row, 3 sets of 8 to 12. There you go again, 2 exercises for your back, meets that criteria, 6 working sets. And then for your shoulders, you could do dumbbell lateral raises, 3 sets of 10 to 12. And then for your arms, seated bicep curls for your bicep, 3 sets of 10 to 12, and then tricep push downs, 3 sets of 12 to 15. Now, if you're wondering, Christian, there's only 1 exercise for biceps there, 1 exercise for triceps, and 1 exercise for shoulders, and there's only 3 sets. I'll explain the reason why. It's built like this on purpose. When you do a bench press, an incline dumbbell press, any chest exercise, you are indirectly training your triceps. So you're already getting some stimulus in your triceps by doing them exercises. So you can get away with just doing 1 direct tricep exercise and still get good progress. Same with your biceps. When you're doing any back exercise or any pulling exercises, you are working your biceps indirectly. So by the time you come to do any bicep exercise, you've already got some decent stimulus from the other 2 back exercises that you've done. Same with your shoulders. When you're training your chest, you're working a lot of your front delt. So all that's left really is to do a lateral raise to hit the side part of your delt. So that's why 1 exercise will suffice. And this session will last roughly about 60 minutes. Now we've finished our upper body day on Monday. Wednesday is going to be your lower body day. So again, using the exact same principles, you've got your quads and your hamstrings. And if you want to train your calves, you can do. I personally don't train calves because I don't care about them, but you can put some calves in there if you want. But for your quads, I would opt for either a high bar squat with a barbell, or a leg press or a hack squat for your first exercise, and then something like a leg extension. Those 2 quad exercises ticked off straight away. For your hamstrings, you could do a Romanian deadlift and then a hamstring curl, and then your hamstrings covered. And if you really want to train your calves, some form of calf raise. Now, in this 3 hour per week training system, I only get my guys to train their legs once per week. The reason is a lot of the guys I work with want to focus predominantly on the upper body rather than the legs, but they still don't want chicken legs. So once a week will still get some growth for your legs, but it wouldn't be as optimal as doing it 2 times per week. But like I said, a lot of the guys I train have more of a focus towards their upper body. So that's your choice. You can decide what you want to do there. For me personally, I train my legs twice a week because I think having a big pair of quads is pretty fucking sick, but it's your call. For the last day of the week, it's going to be your upper body again. So just like your first upper body session of the week, you're going to train your chest, your back, your shoulders and your arms. That ticks the box of training each muscle 2 times per week. But what we're going to do differently in this second upper body session is do a different variation of exercises, because like I said, we're going to pick 2 to 4 exercises per body part and spread it across the week. So if you remember, in upper body A on Monday, we did flat bench press, 3 sets of 6 to 8, incline dumbbell press, 3 sets of 8 to 10. So today we're going to do a seated chest press, 2 sets of 8 to 10 reps, incline dumbbell fly, 2 sets of 10 to 12 reps, There are your 4 exercises, 10 sets total, chest done. So now we're moving on to back. We're going to do lat prayer for 2 sets of 15 to 20, single arm dumbbell row, 2 sets of 8 to 10 per arm. So that's your back now covered, 4 exercises to hit your back, 10 sets total. What I would say is if you are doing 10 sets per week and you find yourself recovering and you feel fine, you can add an extra set or 2 to these exercises the following week. So you could potentially do 11 sets per week or 12 sets per week. It's not a hard and fast rule that you can only do 10 sets per week, but it's a good starting point. So going on to your shoulders, seated lateral raises, 3 to 4 sets of 12 to 15, EZ bicep curls, 3 sets of 8 to 10, EZ bar overhead extension, 3 sets of 10 to 12. So that is your 3-day per week training plan done and dusted. Upper body Monday, lower body Wednesday, upper body on Friday. Now, again, 1 hour per session. You don't need to spend more than 3 hours per week in the gym. And following this plan will get you roughly 95% of all the gains you will ever get with your training career. I want to use the analogy of cleaning your house. Do you know if you just do some basic cleaning in the house, you clean the floor, clean the hoover, clean the sides, and the house is 95% clean. It might take you an hour to do all of that, including hoovering the floor, hoovering the stairs. But let's say you wanted to get that house 100% clean because let's say you're selling it. So you have to clean under the sofa. You've got to move the sofa. You've got to move cabinets. You've got to clean behind the cabinets. You've got to do the skirting board. You've got to move things out of the cupboards and clean all the cupboards. To get your house at 5% cleaner, it might take you an extra 3 hours of cleaning. It's the same with your progress in the gym. 3 hours per week will get you 95% of the results you'll ever get. If you want to get that extra 5%, you might have to train an extra day or 2. But do you really want to make that trade-off? That is up to you. And to prove the 3 hour per week training system works, I've used it on clients like Charlie, Stu, and Denny, who got in fantastic shape just training 3 hours per week. So guys, that is the video. I hope you liked it. If you want to download your own free copy of the 3 hour per week training system, just go to the description, press the link and you can download it. Or if you want to work with me directly, just press the other link and you can have a chat with me. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.